Welcome to another episode of What Am I Even Doing? I am Tara Lilly, a fractional marketing leader, and with me today is Olu Brown, coach, speaker, author, and a candidate running for governor of Georgia. Olu, thank you for being here today with me.
Well, Tara, what a pleasure, and it's an honor to be on this episode and just to share my story with the folks who'll be viewing. Thank you for this chance.
Yeah, and gosh, I mentioned a bunch of things to describe you, and I want to get into where you are today. But before we do that, you started a long time ago building a church in Atlanta, Georgia called Impact. And this was what, around 2007?
Yeah, 2007. Yeah,
And you started with like 25, 20 people, right?
25 volunteers. It was a real startup.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. But thankfully, that story is evolution, like all of our stories, in particular for entrepreneurship. I worked for another church as an associate, as a youth pastor, for about 5.5 years previous to launching Impact. And from that, we were able to build the support from people who became well wishers, who became donors, who became members of the congregation. And little did I know during that 5.5 years, we were building impact behind the scenes. But when we got to the starting line, there were only 25 people. And it was a bit discouraging at times. It was frightening. We didn't have our property that we wanted to start in approved, and just going through a lot of hoops and a lot of hurdles. It was very much a moment of, is this really what we're supposed to be doing? Am I really called to do this work? And I think so many people arrive at that point when they're taking a risk, when they're trying something new, when they're stepping out really on faith. And my whole life has been one big faith risk after another. One of my favorite scriptures is in the book of Joshua in the Old Testament, chapter 3, where they're going into the promised land, but they have to cross what historically and geographically is the Jordan River. And it says that the water didn't part until their feet touched the edge. And I think that's what risk taking is all about. You can plan, you can have strategy, you can have capital, you can have well wishers, but unless you're willing to take that first step, and there are no guarantees, often we don't see the great miracles that can take place in our life and our careers.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's what you did with Impact, right? Because even though you started out small, you felt that push, this is what you need to do, and you stuck with it and grew it to being what number the fast
Yeah.
five or number five
Yeah.
growing church out of 25 or something and up to
Yeah. So we made a national list right before COVID, one of the fastest growing churches in the country. And that's every Christian faith practice. But in our own denomination, which was United Methodist, we were the largest congregation in the state of Georgia.
5,000. Wow.
Now, to kind of put that into perspective, because I know folks are watching and they're like, man, I'm against the odds here. Well, here are the odds. When I was appointed in 2006 to start this church, I was zero out of more than 800 churches. And if you add all of the churches in Georgia that were a part of our denomination, we were zero out of more than 1,000. We didn't even have a new name. In Athens, Georgia, when the leadership, called out my name, they said, Olu Brown, new church start. You talk about being at a zero level. And my office became Starbucks. And the community, folks know about, having to do all of those kind of mixed use officing opportunities. But it was networking. Looking back, it was a great sacrifice. And logistically, it was often a nightmare. But even our small group meetings or our planning meetings, we had to meet in community. So we were in restaurants, we were in coffee shops. And I think about one of the persons that we hired earlier on in the IT kind of space. He was a kid, he was in college, wasn't even through with college. And the job interview was at a local coffee shop. And while we were interviewing him on one side of the coffee shop, we had a small group on the other side of the
Oh,
coffee
wow.
shop. So we were just kind of herding cats and managing all of this in the same space. But he's still a friend of mine today. He's gone on to do super great things, but he remembers his start at Impact. And one of the things I encourage people about living their dreams, you have no idea how you're helping to initiate other people's dreams.
Ooh.
So this vision, this dream, this effort, this getting it started, it's really just not about you. You're a catalyst for so many other people who are watching you, who are tracking to you, and you don't even know it, but you're their inspiration even on your hardest day.
Oh, that's so good. That was just motivational, just what in the first 5 minutes. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel so inspired right now because that is true. Like it's not just
Mhm.
you. Like it's a
Yeah.
journey of multiple people, and like you started with that small group, you grew it
Yeah.
over what is about 10. How long did it take you to grow up to be to that size?
So I was there 15 years
Okay.
and we were still growing. Of course, COVID was a game changer for everyone, but thankfully we were still growing and evolving during COVID. Of course, more digital than in person, but we hit some of our first benchmarks of growth, whether that's in people or financial, in our first 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
And there were moments, even in those growth moments, where we just weren't sure because you can always grow to whatever your next level is, but there's always another level.
Mm.
And one of the takeaways I learned is learning to appreciate where you are. And that doesn't mean you don't have any other stretch goals. It doesn't mean you don't have any other thing you want to obtain. But if you're not careful, you can fall in love with next and you can miss now. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, over those 15 years, the entrepreneurial journey was so hard and difficult for me. I didn't enjoy it a lot. But there were people along the ride who loved it. And they remember these moments. They're like, oh, do you remember when we did this? And those are some of the toughest moments in my life. So we always talk about these do-overs. If I had it to do over again, I would have enjoyed every moment, even the toughest moments, because you realize it's never about next. It's about
Mhm.
appreciating now and letting next evolve. You should have your goals and things, but don't put everything on next. It's a gamble you'll never win.
Yeah, that's a good reminder because I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in I'm gonna be happy or everything's gonna be better if I'm at this level, right? Or if
Here.
I have this goal reached. And then the temporary discomfort you have right now can be actually a really good thing because it's
Yes.
preparing you for what's to come. But like you mentioned, this season that may feel really uncomfortable is actually when you look back be it could be one of your best seasons or a really good season that takes you to wherever you're going to go next.
Yeah, very much so. And what most leaders discover, it was a growth season.
Mm.
You look at this last Super Bowl, and not that everyone watches sports or football, and I'm not the biggest Sunday to Sunday fan, but in this last Super Bowl, two historic teams, Seattle and New England, but you didn't see some of the favorites in the Super Bowl, the folks that people thought Kansas City, here we go again, or, Philly, here we go again. And it's not to say anything negative about those teams and those players because to play at that level and never get to the Super Bowl is still great. But it does show that staying at a certain level is not possible forever,
Mhm.
that we all ebb and flow. And I'm sure for those teams that historically were thought to go to the Super Bowl but didn't this year, I bet you they're practicing harder. They're looking at their game film a little bit differently, and they're not taking it for granted because they realize this is not promised. So it's the same with business. It's the same with following your dreams in any arena. It's never promised, and that's why we appreciate now. But we also have to be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do as we're going through those now moments, and that separates us from a lot of different people. Doesn't make us better, but it just makes us different.
Yeah. And you've had so many of those. Like today, you're no longer part of Impact, right?
No, no, fully retired in the local church. Support them, pray for them, and wish big things for them.
So you retired back in, was it 2021 or around there?
2022, summer
2022.
2022.
Okay, I want to talk about how difficult was that for you to say, okay, this chapter, this church grew, and I now am transitioning to a different season in my life. Was that a really difficult decision to make?
So, Tara, I want to give you a moment of appreciation. You helped with that transition. So, when I was a pastor, we were working with a firm. And when I was transitioning from being a pastor, I still needed the support, but we knew that this was an entrepreneurial effort, and you were recommended from the firm that we were working with the local church. And little did I know, more than 3 years later, we would still be partners in this work. So, a lot of the material from advertising to marketing, even to our group settings, what people see in their handouts, you've produced those things and have helped us to evolve them in ways that, like I mentioned earlier, it's just not about us. It's not about you. You didn't know this, but you've taught folks across the country through the materials that you've helped package and put together. So, as risky as that effort was 3.5 years ago, folks like you, and in particular you and Terra Lilly Enterprises and your company, helped make that transition a lot better. And you continue to help and facilitate as early as last week with a group in Detroit. And people leave your sessions inspired, they leave your sessions informed, and they're ready to go out and conquer the world. So, transitioning, like anyone, is risky, it's frightening. And I go back to those moments from time to time because for you, for me, you realize it's not static. You go through the risk and it levels off, and then here comes another risk. But when you go through those risks again, you have to look back on the moments when you were afraid, previously, and how things worked out, whether it's the people, the numbers, the relationships, the development, the projects, the new clients, the transitioning clients, whatever it is, it's all the same common denominator for every leader, for every entrepreneur, is being able to manage the risk.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your kind words like that. I'm asking you about yourself, and you just take the time to say just very kind things, and I appreciate that so much. And like I agree, little did I know when we met years ago that we'd still be working together, and it's been such a pleasant experience to be able to help you build your coaching business and then see you grow it and then now go after a new dream, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But
Yeah.
you're right in that people, the support group, or even bringing people in to help you get to that next season or that next level or reach that next goal is so important. Like we're not in this alone. We need those people who are skilled and talented in areas we're not, but also that, like you mentioned before, they're along for the ride because they're also living out their own dreams and their own goals too. And going back to when you left Impact, what were some of the things that you did beyond like bringing in the resources? But how did
Yeah.
you take that first step to make that your business idea into reality? Like when did you say, okay, these are the things that I know I need to do, or this is what I'm going to do next?
Well, a couple of things. I got certified in being a coach, and thankfully, a peer of mine who she had transitioned from pastoral ministry a few years before I did and was doing professional coaching. We had breakfast together, and I'd always brushed the opportunity off, but for some reason, it spoke to me differently. And so I started my certification for coaching as I was transitioning. And this was also during COVID. So a typical work day for me as a pastor would have been out in community at a local hospital, at a recreation or whatever it is. And I just would not have had the time to do the number of hours that were required to get my coaching certification. But when COVID happened, everything went virtual. And so here was this window of time in order to get the coaching hours that I needed. And that was a big part. And then we, started putting our shingle out and asking people across the country about taking up this opportunity. And I was worried, I was concerned. Could we meet our goal? And I think the goal then was anywhere from 5 to 10 initial coaching clients.
Okay.
And suddenly, we start meeting this goal. And I kept the client list on a little Excel spreadsheet, and the names kept increasing and increasing until I realized, wow, this could be a sustainable venture. And then partnering with folks like you to make sure that our marketing and all of the website and all of the technical things that I just have no idea of how to do, but needing very good people like yourself to do that. And luckily, as a entrepreneurial pastor, there are a lot of different types of pastors, and I think we need all of them. But I was more of an entrepreneurial pastor who took several risks. We started a lot of programs. We started a lot of ventures. So I went back to that muscle memory, but this time I decided to do it for myself. So Tara, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the transition for me came down to this phrase, and I say it very often. I want to bet on myself. My whole career, and it's nothing wrong with it. I think we need to support people, but my whole career was supporting other people's dreams. It would be during church and after church is over with, hey, Olu, please pray for me. I'm applying for a job in Washington. And then 2 weeks later, hey, I got the job and we're moving. So that had been my whole career. But I realized I didn't bet on myself very well. And this transition coming from the local church as a pastor to being a small business owner and entrepreneur really was about me betting on myself and putting all of the technical and support systems that I had helped other people put in place to do it for myself. And thankfully, 3.5 years later, it seems like it was a risk worth taking.
Wow. That is very true. I can relate to that because I worked in corporate and startups and agencies and everything up until I decided to work for myself. And even though I had like a small wedding photography business, like it was still not one I relied on. But it is like the harder you work, the more time you put in, the more effort, the more energy, like it feels good. But at the end of the day, like it's just you're making somebody else's business more successful,
Yeah.
even though like you're serving customers well and you're serving your internal customers, the other employees and coworkers well. It's still building somebody else's dream. And so being able to do that with one that you're like, I see an opportunity and I want to do things differently. Like there's so much just there's like just feeling accomplished and good about it at the end of the day of doing that for yourself. And so when you started your coaching business, like you obviously have walked the walk. You started a church
Yes.
from a small group, built it up, and
Yes.
like you mentioned, you went through a lot of challenges and some wins. But because of that, now you could go to these other church leaders and say, hey, let me help you because I've been there, right? Is that kind of how you started getting your first set of clients from the relationships you already had previously?
Very much so. It is and it was very relational of people who I knew had unique challenges in the space that I had served in for a couple of decades. And not that I felt I can be a solution to every problem, because when we think about coaching, it's coming alongside someone and helping them unearth the answers that are within them or in their ecosystem. But my coaching tends to partner that philosophy along with consulting. So that's been a good mix for me. And I found a lot of folks are needing that. They need the cheerleader. They need the, hey, what are you thinking? What are you believing? How do you see the situation? But from time to time, they also need to say, hey, if you were in my seat, what would you do? Because it's just a lot on the line. But we did build the first relationships with people, or coaching clients with people we had relationships with. But the business was always a 3 or 4 pillar approach. So coaching was one of those approaches. Consulting was another approach. You've worked with me on several book projects, And so this is another testimony. I was in Mobile, Alabama a couple of weeks ago. We're working with a group of churches there. And this gentleman, he isn't a preacher. He works in the hospital system in accounting.
Okay.
And the he says when I introduced myself, he says, "Oh, you're Olu, the normalizing next guy," and he says, "I use your book in my work." So this expansive dream of taking risks will always reach more people, and you've helped me with my book project. So that's something I'm so excited about as I look at all of the pillars of this business, from coaching, consulting, to being an author, to being a speaker. And one of the big parts of it are these cohorts that we've now had almost 20 of those that have met literally from coast to coast of bringing together not only clergy persons, but lay people. These are folks who work in the marketplace, they're business owners, they're in the academic space, they are in the corporate space. And leaving these sessions with them after 6 or 9 months of meeting monthly and them being inspired to help make a difference in their communities in the world that they live in.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's true. Like, I feel like a lot of what you come from the core is like this place of treating people well and caring. And at the end of the day, we're humans, right? We're humans serving other humans in business or in whatever your your goal is or whatever that you are pursuing. And with all the risks that come with starting something and transitioning through it and the growth, how do you handle setbacks or failures? Like maybe you didn't reach the goal you really wanted to, or it's taking longer. How do you handle that?
Not always well. No. Uh, so, of course, as a pastor, I'm a person of faith, and I don't push or mandate faith on anyone. I believe we all are centered and grounded in our own way. But a lot of mine comes through my faith, and my particular faith is Christianity. So keeping a close relationship in that part of my life, whether that is attending a faith community or reading devotions or reading the Bible and spending time in prayer and in meditation, those are big ways that keep me less frustrated. I go through the same anxiety, frustration cycles as anyone, but it gives me from time to time a bit stronger foundation where I don't stay in those loops as long or they're not as impactful. Secondly, I've always had a therapist relationship, and we check in once a month, and it helps me stay focused and having someone who is neutral to work through not only professional but personal in any area of my life that we give that time over to. And then thirdly, I'm a coach, but guess what? I have coaches in my life. I think everyone needs a coach. Everyone needs a mentor. Everyone needs someone who is external to their situation. And it's not only about accountability, but it's just knowing you're tethered to something. We used to love letting balloons go with helium in them when we were kids and just watching them float to a place to where we could no longer see them anymore. Well, that's cool for a balloon, but if you live your life like that, it's not too good. Or if your business is like that or your startup is like that, everyone needs something that they can be grounded in that is not only for information, but it's also for inspiration and it's for accountability, it's for support. So those are the ways historically that I'm able to make it through those transition, and thankful for my family, thankful for those folks who, have been my cheerleaders at times and other times have been a good mirror of reflection to say, hey, Olu, you're not, you're not as great as you think you are, which is helpful, to have those people because without them, we'll be like that balloon floating into unknown places.
Yeah, that tough love, it can sting, but boy, is it important, right?
It is.
And I'm glad
It
you said
is.
that about like you have a routine or you have a practice that helps you like prayer and devotions and meditation and whatever that is for anybody, like it is good just to have that time that you spend with yourself and what helps you get through those difficult moments. Because I'm glad you said that, hey, you have these too. It's
Yeah.
very normal, but there are things that you can do and people you can have in your life that help you navigate it.
Yes. Yes. And I think, in particular, with startups and entrepreneurial ventures, not having those things is just as risky as not having the clients and the capital and all of those types of
Yeah.
technical aspects that we think we need for a business. It's also the soft touch or the
Yes.
personal side that we need as well.
Yes. Okay, I want to shift to
Yeah,
you're running for governor of Georgia.
I
And I
am.
remember when we first sat down and you told me that, I was like, what? Wait.
Yeah.
And okay, so it's this year. You started your campaign a couple years ago, right? Around
Mhm.
2024.
24.
Um,
Uh-huh.
and now this is the year that you're running. So I just want to talk about a little bit how how did you make that decision? Is that something you've been wanting for a while and you're finally like, all right, this is the time. Here's when I'm going to make this happen.
So for me, it was a lifelong decision. This sounds a little bit weird, but I remember being a kid sitting in elementary school, reading the Constitution and seeing the age that you needed to be to run for office. And I would calculate the age I was and project out into the future. So growing up, yeah, people
Oh
knew I wanted
wow.
to do two things. I wanted to be a preacher and I wanted to be a politician.
Oh.
And journalism or writing to some degree was always a part of my life. And so if you look back at some of my early writings or some of my early speeches and talks before, I was this preacher, there are all of these political parallels that flowed through my life and flowed through my work. And like anyone, opportunity in life happened. So came to Atlanta to go to graduate school, worked at a local church for about 5.5 years, transitioned to starting a new church, and that was 15 years. And you look up and 2 decades have gone by, and you realize that although these decades have gone by, you still have a passion and a desire to fulfill that dream that's been in your heart. And when I retired and started this new business, I went back to that dream and had some really heart to heart conversations with people and leaders in Georgia. And they said about this race, Olu, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the craziest thing you'll ever do. It's the most expensive thing you'll ever do. But there was always this window of hope. And I'm a risk taker, but I'm a calculated risk taker. And here is how I live my life. My greatest regrets aren't the things that I've done, it's the things that I didn't do. And I knew one day, hopefully in my 90s or so, sitting in a rocking chair with people thinking that I'd accomplished a lot secretly, I would have known that this was the opportunity that I missed. And I didn't want to live my final days with that regret.
So this was one of those things where it's going to be hard, like everybody
Yes,
told you, but you're like, I can't sit with myself,
can't do it.
30, 40 years from now and be
Yeah.
like, I didn't do it because I thought it would be too hard. Like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a hard pill to swallow.
And, and this isn't to knock any person in office or anyone running for office. When you think about a resume of public service, that's what I've done for my last 20 years as a clergy person, as a community leader, as an advocate for families, as an advocate for children, as a person who has sat with people in the best times of their lives and in the worst times of their lives. And I
Wow.
reminded myself, Olu, that's the resume that we really need to see for people in politics these days, as opposed to, unfortunately, some of the stories that we see related to people serving for reasons that don't have anything to do with people in the communities that they should be serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the decision you made to start running for governor, was it based off like this is the vision I have? Like you mentioned the politicians that not all of them, but there are quite a bit of politicians who maybe lack the the vision that incorporates people. So did you start out with like, this is my mission, this is my vision, this is my why?
In a sense, I did, but I started out with more questions around
Okay.
what's happening in our state, what do people need, and so we started, and you helped me with my initial launch material. We called it a listening tour, and got a chance to talk to a lot of people in person and virtually. And here are the three questions. What do you love about Georgia? What are your concerns, and what would you change? And so even that approach was different than most people running in a political campaign, because we often want to tell people who they are, where they are, and what they need. But I've learned as a clergy person over the years, most people are pretty sure about who they are, and most people are pretty sure about what they need. The question is, do you care? And do you want to take the time to hear their story? And for me, being a governor is an extension of my entire life. It's all about public service and what I call being a servant leader. So some people say, oh, look, how can you go from being a pastor to a politician? Well, if your heart is in the right place, it's not a transition, it's just a label. Because whatever you do professionally, if your heart is in the right place, it's more about people than it's about you. You can change labels all the time, but you'll still be effective because it's not about you, it's about the people you're called to serve.
Wow, that's huge. And so
Yeah.
you traveled all over Georgia, had these
Yeah.
conversations. What came out of it? Like, what did you develop
Yeah.
your vision from that, or what did you uncover with these conversations?
Well, one of the things that came out was a heartbreaking reality that a lot of people feel unseen and overlooked. Like any state, you've got these metropolitan areas, but in particular in the South and Southeast, when you get outside of the metropolitan area, it's a lot of small town living. But it's people who feel as if they don't count. And here are the three things that I heard traveling outside of metropolitan Georgia. Olu, we're glad you're here. Don't forget about us, and please come back. And that shaped the vision for this campaign. It's a people powered campaign where we are working together to build and construct a Georgia where everyone counts, where everyone matters, where everyone has a voice, where everyone has a place. But guess what? When I was a pastor, we had something we call extreme hospitality. All people are welcome, all people have a place, and all people matter. And so it's the same work that I'm doing now, running for office, that I did as a faith leader years ago. It's just a different label, a different position, but it's the same work. And that's the vision, to be a governor who cares, listens to, and serves all of Georgia.
Wow. Yeah. And like you mentioned, it's not, when you think of Georgia, it's not just Atlanta, it's not just Savannah. Like, there's so many
Yeah.
other smaller towns that matter. There's people there. And you going and spending time with them and listening to them was probably, they probably haven't had much of that over the
No.
years, if any, right?
Most people look at me and say, I've never seen anybody running for governor, or I've never seen anybody doing this. But it goes back to where we started in the conversation. It's been more inspirational for people than anything, because I hear all the time, hey, Olu, I see you. I'm proud of you. This is helping me. And that's what it's all about. Win, lose, or draw. We always want to win. We always want to serve in the vision that we see for ourselves. But so often it's not the end result, but it's the process along the way that changes you and it changes other people.
Yeah, and this has been inspirational just for me to see you run for governor, because like you
Thank you.
said, like, there's a vision you have, people have in their head of like, a politician is this, and you're
Yes.
like, no, this is my dream, and I've already been serving people my entire career and before that, and like you mentioned, it's just a label change. I'm still doing what I've always done. And just you saying that is like a shift in, like, hey, there are other things that are possible. Just because we've been painted a picture of what this particular career or this particular person would look like isn't necessarily true. There's a different perspective, and there's always a different way to approach it.
Yeah, very much so. And one thing I tell people, and this is from my whole entire life and being with a lot of people, in particular in their end of life moments, um,
Mm.
and hearing regrets or hearing, I wish I would have. Most people, when they get to the end of anything, whether it's retirement or life itself, the things you think are important to them, they aren't. It's the
Mm.
relationships, it's the time. Um, I remember growing up in Texas in a little small town. We had these outside parks like anyone, but they would have these merry-go-rounds and they were very unsafe because it was just a steel plate, you know, with some bars on there. And we would spin around until we just got dizzy and fell off, or sometimes we would try to jump off and go as far as we could in the air. But those things were fun as kids, but the reality is it's not like life. You go around it once. And
Mm.
so many people that I've walked with in life had wishes to do it all over again, but they couldn't. And those were life lessons for me. You go
Mm.
around this thing once, live it to the fullest, the barriers, the restrictions other people put on you, the barriers, the restrictions you put on yourself. You got to let go of those things,
Yeah.
and you live your life to an audience of one, and
Mm.
that's what this thing is all about.
Wow. And so,
Mhm.
talking about balance, because you are running a
Yeah,
business, you're running for
yeah.
governor, you have a family, and then spending time, like you mentioned, like meditating and time in the Bible. Like, how do you how do you balance everything? And what's your advice for a busy leader or business entrepreneur? Like, how do you recommend just balancing all those things in life?
I don't know if balance is possible when you're living or chasing your dream
Mm.
in any arena because there are just priorities that you're constantly having to manage and the priorities of other people as well. What I would encourage folks to do is decide what are those core elements that are important to you, whether they're daily, weekly, or monthly, and those are the things that I would schedule in. But I wouldn't be static about scheduling to say
Mm.
this has to be every day at 6:05 a.m. This has to be every day at 2 p.m. I was talking to a friend, we're part of a workout group, and that's another thing that keeps me centered is my workout
Mhm.
schedule. And typically we're in there pretty early in the morning. He says, well, Olu, I didn't make it early in the morning yesterday, but I went at a different time. It was a different group, a different vibe, but I enjoyed it. So it's living your life in those ways to where exercise is important to me, but if it doesn't happen
Mhm.
every day at 6 a.m., the world won't end. Hey,
Mhm.
maybe try at 5 p.m. and you'll meet some new friends. So it's having those things that are important to you but not locking them in a way that they become mandated for you and you don't
Mhm.
enjoy them anymore. So if your priority is calling a sibling every week, well, make sure you do that. If a priority is around a healthier eating lifestyle, well, what does it look like to do meal prep? If your grounding is around something spiritual, well, what does it look like to make sure daily or weekly those are a part of your life? If your grounding is spending time with a significant other in a certain way, well, how do we make that a priority? It may not be every Tuesday, but in a 7 day window, we've made sure we've had that time together.
Mhm. I think that's what I like preach all the time to myself
Yeah.
is consistency, not perfection. Just be
Yes.
consistent, which is like you just mentioned, like
Yeah.
you don't have to do it every day at the same time.
Mhm.
Like it can be flexible. You just have to be consistent. Don't try to be perfect with it. And I think that's
Very,
like we get caught up in that a lot.
yeah. So we'll start making perfection the aim, and it's never
Hmm.
possible. And
Right.
I think that's where people get frustrated. They get off track, they get disappointed. But it's not perfection that's our aim. It's what you said. It's consistency, it's connection, and keeping those two in view, you'll always win.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
this is a great time for us to switch to what I like to call the quick fire round of questions.
I'm ready for them
All
too.
right. Okay. So you're from Georgia, so I have to
Yes.
ask you Chick-fil-A breakfast or Chick-fil-A dinner?
Both.
All the same day, right? Make it
Yeah.
well-rounded.
So my rule with Chick-fil-A is I can't eat there more than once in a day. But my guilty pleasure is that has happened. So I have been known to have breakfast and dinner at Chick-fil-A, but I try not to. So my answer to that is both, if I can.
Okay. Do you have like a go-to meal for that
Oh
you
God,
always
yes.
get?
So I do a number one,
Okay.
deluxe with American cheese, and I upsize everything. And then I get a kid's cup, ice cream, and a cookie.
Oh,
And I take that
yes.
cookie and I crumble it up and smother it with ice cream. So
Oh,
it's my
that,
dessert.
yes.
Yeah.
That's the only
And
way
my
to do it. There's no going back
and my
now.
well, and my favorite sauce is the honey roasted barbecue sauce. That is my favorite.
Ooh,
And a lot of people don't
okay.
even know it exists.
No.
It's a high end sauce. You have to ask for it.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
not one of the typical Chick-fil-A
No.
sauce or
Or
Polynesian or
Polynesian.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
So that
right.
honey roasted barbecue. Yeah.
It's like now you're talking about the secret menu at Chick-fil-A.
uh, Very, yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It's almost that 10.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird. Yeah.
Early
Our
bird.
workout begins at 4:30. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
if I'm not traveling, my alarm goes off at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. And so that's when you
Yeah.
get up. Do you do like your quiet time before that and then you go work
No, I'm
out?
trying to get to the gym.
Oh,
Because if you don't get there on time, they'll punish you with extra workout. So,
oh
yeah, yeah. So mornings typically for me are 3 to 3:30. Be at the gym by 4:20.
no.
Our first
Okay.
workout is at 4:30. Second workout is at 5:30. And then I'm in car line, dropping off my youngest by
Okay.
7:30. So by the
Wow.
time 8 o'clock comes, I've done a lot. I've done a lot, and it
Yeah.
catches up with me in the evening. So yeah.
Okay. So if you wake up at 3, then what time do you go to bed?
It would be great if I were in bed between 10 and 11. So yeah,
So
but
you
yeah,
you're
it
not
catches up.
running on. Okay, so 8 hours of sleep, that's not happening for you, right?
Not typically. I am appreciating more or taking naps or breaks during
Oh,
the day.
yeah.
And that might be 15 minutes or 30 minutes, those kind of power rechargers. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I grew up with a lot of older adults who during the day they would take, what some cultures call a siesta. And now with science and all of this technology, they knew then what we know now can be a healthier lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah,
those power naps.
very much
Don't,
so.
I was gonna say don't sleep on them, but you really want to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Yep.
Okay, and all right, so you've been all over Georgia. I have to
Yeah.
ask, what is one of the best places you've been in Georgia that many people don't know about you'd recommend they go visit?
Yeah. Well, Georgia is such a beautiful state. I was on the call with Fannin County, Georgia, which is right at the Tennessee line, the Blue Ridge Mountains,
Okay.
Appalachian Mountain area, and beautiful part of the country, beautiful part of the state. And so you get the mountain air, you get the elevation, you get the scenery. And so great, great, great part of Georgia. And then next week I'll be in coastal Georgia, in Savannah. And so uniquely, I am a mountain person and I'm also a beach person. So for me, not necessarily areas people don't know about, but my encouragement would be to spend time in those spaces that you know about, but often you don't give yourself the time, space, and the liberty to hang out there.
Ooh, yeah, yes. I can appreciate the mountains and the beach. Same. They're
Yeah.
both beautiful. Um, and okay, this is not. This is a pretty difficult question. If you could choose anyone from history to have dinner with, who would it be?
Yeah. So this is February, Black History Month, and not only because of that, but I've always been a big fan of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Being here in Atlanta, has allowed me to talk with a lot of people who went to school with him,
Oh,
who knew
wow.
him, who had,
Wow.
deep and abiding relationships with him. And so he's a person that if I had an opportunity to meet with and have lunch, breakfast, or dinner with, it would be him.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's been so cool to like be able to meet people who knew him.
Yeah.
That's must
Oh,
have been incredible.
yeah. There was this one couple, and of course, being a pastor, you're in a lot of homes, you're in a lot of
Hmm.
places where people share openly because it's safe for them. But
Yeah.
and I got a copy of it as well. But it was her marriage license, and I think it was for her parents' wedding where Dr. King married them.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and this was before he had his PhD from Boston University. So it was just signed Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh,
And so
wow.
those are parts of history that I hold dear. And
Hmm.
now, as we see that group aging quite a bit, there are fewer and fewer people who can tell some of those personal stories. But
Hmm.
I've tried to collect them over the years and have those conversations as much as I could and as much as I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. Wow. And he would be phenomenal to sit down with at dinner and just
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
conversation. Like
yeah,
beyond all the stuff you see in media and history books,
yeah.
like the things like you just mentioned that just make him who he was that, never really made books or are those untold stories or quietly told stories, I should say.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Olu, thank you so much for joining me today. Olu Brown at olubrown.com and Olu for Governor. Is that the other website?
Olu4ga.com. Olu4ga.com.
olu4gav.com. Thank you so much. I'm going to put all your information in the YouTube
Thanks.
description. And I enjoyed our conversation today. I'm walking away feeling inspired. So thank you so much for your openness. And gosh, I mean, just even that little pump of, hey, keep going. This,
That's
this
it.
is normal. Like, this was great. I appreciate you so much. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Tara.
being here. And I'll see you guys on the next episode of What Am I Even Doing? Thanks.